It's been a brutal week for crypto investors. The value of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies has plunged. The sell-off began after the collapse of what was supposed to be one of the safest crypto assets, the so-called stablecoin Terra, whose value was pegged to the US dollar. Terra's collapse led investors to dump Bitcoin, which bottomed out at about $26,500 US dollars. It was before at about 34,000 US dollars. It has regained some ground on Friday, but it still lost more than half of its value in the last 6 months. That also goes for the entire crypto market. It was worth about $3 trillion in November 2021. It's now worth about $1.5 trillion. Now, given that cryptocurrencies are mostly used for speculation, economists see the global fallout as limited, with some exceptions. Take El Salvador, the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender. Have a look.
In a market crash, regular investors might panic and run for dear life. But crypto evangelists, they just keep cool and bite the dip. That's what El Salvador's president Nayib Bukele did this week. Amid one of the worst crashes in Bitcoin's history, he literally bought the dip, spending $15.5 million to add 500 Bitcoins to the national reserves. In September 2021, in a world first, El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. But after its all-time high in November, the virtual currency's value kept sliding until this week's disastrous crash. Bukele, who describes himself as the coolest president in the world, isn't fazed by the crash and has bigger plans. In a display of grandeur, he shared illustrations and models of Bitcoin City, a libertarian utopia with no taxes to be built on the site of the dormant Conchagua volcano. The International Monetary Fund isn't impressed. In January, it pushed El Salvador to ditch its Bitcoin experiment. Rating agencies Fitch and Moody have then downgraded the country's rate to junk, crippling its ability to access international loans. According to analysts, El Salvador is now on the brink of default.
Now for more on this, let's bring in Christy Platson from DW Business and Bond. Christy, thanks for being here. So we know cryptocurrencies are volatile. This has always been the case. Why did some countries like El Salvador bet so big on it?
Right, Chelsea. Well, there are still a lot of attractive qualities about cryptocurrencies to these markets, or to emerging markets, I should say. I mean, even with this major dip we're seeing this week, there's still over $1 trillion worth of value in that space. And by making cryptocurrencies, or Bitcoin specifically, into legal tender, these countries like El Salvador are trying to get some of that value into the country, try to get investment through Bitcoin there. There's also the fact that cryptocurrency is really quick and free to transfer. So making remittance payments from abroad back to El Salvador, for example, is a big positive for them as well. So there are several reasons why they've gotten on board there.
Well, what kind of economic impact can we expect this to have, the sell-off we've seen this week, on their economies?
Right. I mean, with this volatility we're seeing, and seeing how invested that El Salvador, again, for example, is in Bitcoin, there's obviously going to be some sort of major impact here. As far as I understand, El Salvador has put, somewhere over $100 million into Bitcoin. And now with this recent dip, they've lost somewhere around $40 million dollars in Bitcoin. That is actually more than the next payment on their foreign bond payment coming up in June. And there's some chatter that they might actually end up having to default on some of these payments going forward. So this is obviously a major hit and a major concern for them.
So looking just more broadly at the crypto market, obviously we've seen crypto markets melt down a lot in the past. Is this just a temporary blip? Is it something more meaningful?
Right. Well, we're in a different landscape now than we were over the last years. Interest rates are rising. We don't have money flowing, government money flowing in from the pandemic anymore. So cryptocurrencies are going to have a reckoning with the new financial environment that they're in now. So it'll be a matter of waiting and seeing, but it's certainly not the same type of crisis we saw in the past.
Christy Platson and Bond, thanks so much for joining us.